It's my great pleasure to introduce Meeyoung, the second invited speaker of this conference. Meeyoung is currently an associate professor at the School of Computing at KAIST. She's not from the NLP community. She actually mostly works in the area of data science and computational social science. We invited her because we thought that it would be nice to invite someone from outside of our community, but who works on something that's very related, so that we can look at NLP in a broader context. Meeyoung has been working on computational social science for a long time, and I'm sure some of the people in the audience are very familiar with her work. She has done some very influential work in this area, and especially in analyzing social media platforms such as Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook, and her work has received a lot of citations over the years. She has also received Best Paper Awards at the ACMMC conference and also the ICWSM conference. She served as a program co-chair for the ICWSM conference in 2015. She also worked as a visiting professor at Facebook's data science team, and currently she's on the editorial boards of several journals, including the ACM Transactions on Social Computing. She's also affiliated with the Institute of Basic Science in Korea. So today, I think she's going to talk about fake news and legal liability, which I think are fantastic topics. I think some of the audience in our community, some of the people in our community are also working on very related topics. So without further ado, let's welcome Meeyoung.
Thank you. Okay, so well, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this amazing conference. I'm a computer scientist, but on a daily basis, I work with many interdisciplinary researchers from sociology, psychiatry, economy, and marketing, communication, nursing. So NLP is one of the tools that are really essential for research that we do, and our goal is to build computational models that would solve complex social science problems. So we are living in a world of abundance of data. Any kinds of data that we might think of, our mobility, our thoughts, our connections, they're all logged somewhere. And by collecting them, by merging them, and by applying smart data science tools, we can gain so much understanding about how people consume, create, propagate information without having to intervene people and without having to visit certain places. So here's one example. So this map is showing which city in the United States is adopting technology first. And here the technology is Twitter adoption. So when there are enough number of people adopting Twitter on a given city, the city color will change from blue to red. So these are called the critical masses. For a long time in sociology and in many statistical physics community, we had some theories. The theory was that information would flow from the highest degree users who are more affluent and who are well-connected living in the cities, and then it would flow to less connected individuals. But when we look at information diffusion patterns like these, we are able to see that first it starts from very tech-savvy places, as you might imagine from Boston and California areas. But the next set of cities that information propagates are not necessarily the largest cities. These are cities where people have more connection to the existing cities which adopt information. So even in this digital age, social links, you having someone actually adopt some information is more important than simply living in affluent cities. So can you recognize which place this is? Manhattan, yes. So this picture is showing how people are running, jogging in the Manhattan area. And it's based on the GPS-tracked fitness apps. And this research was done by Aral and Nicolaitis, and it was published in Nature 2017. And the figure on the left is showing a sunny day jogging pattern. On the right is showing a rainy day jogging pattern on both random Saturday. So these researchers, besides producing these beautiful visualization, which is showing the whole map of the Manhattan area with the Central Park, you can recognize it, is that the researchers associated the running pattern of users and the social network of the users on this fitness app. So let's assume that you have two kinds of friends. One friend, type A, is an avid runner who runs every single day. And then you have another friend who is running maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. What is your chance of running more frequently in the next 3 months or in the next year? The answer is, according to the research, it's B. And it also helps if the runner friend is of the same gender to you. Okay? So these are, I think, this kind of study is a great example of computational social science, where we utilize data, we utilize multiple heterogeneous data sources, apply the top research methodology, and we want to solve very important problems like how do we motivate healthy behaviors to spread. So it has policy implications. It could cut down a large amount of tax money spent on diseases. Okay, the next example done by Lars Beckstrom and John Kleinberg, it's looking at a Facebook social graph. So on Facebook, you can declare you are in relationship with somebody, you're in friendship relationship, acquaintance relationship, or you are in a romantic relationship with someone. You're married with someone, engaged with someone. And when that romantic relationship goes away, you can untag yourself silently, right? So researchers looked at how the evolution of these graphs, the patterns of this evolution to predict which couples will stay on a romantic relationship for a longer time than the others. And one easy guess might be, should we have more common friends between the two egos? So yes, common friends is important, but these researchers found it's more than just a raw number of common friends. It's the connection between these common friends, which they explain as the dispersion of the network, which is more important than the raw number of friends. So I want to show you another flavor of computational social science. So I wanted to expose you to different kinds of social science research that are done. And in this work, it's looking at daytime satellite images. And the question is, can we predict economic activities of very poor, underdeveloped regions where we don't even have good ground truth data? For certain countries, the GDP and the population counts are only produced once every decade. For example, for North Korea, the last statistics that we know are from 2008, which is more than a decade ago, and even before the regime change. So the researchers combined CNN and transfer learning, and when they apply to a given satellite image, they're able to detect which part of the satellite images are more likely associated with urban features, which is on the very left one, and then the rural features, water, and roads. Based on these information, they can predict the economic status of one country, and then when you build a model, you can apply to another country and another country where we don't know any statistics of. Okay, so this study, published in Science in 2006 by Jun et al., has spawned a number of different studies, and including what we are really interested in. So previously, economic status could be inferred from nightlight, low-resolution images, because these nightlight satellite images you can download it for free. It's not very big because it's very low resolution. And the premise was that the light intensity would reflect how much economic activities that would be in that certain city. That was great. There are papers that prove this assumption is correct. But when we focus on the underdeveloped regions, usually the night lights are dark, as you can see in this picture taken from the NASA observatory. And it's only been a few years when we are now able to access super high resolution daytime images for free. These images have been there, but these were only certain institutions can have it, or you need to pay a large amount of money to purchase these data sets. And now, you can download images like these for free. In this image, 1 pixel is 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter. So you can't recognize a face, but you can recognize pretty much there's a, this is a house, this is a parking lot, and so on. A human eye can do that. So this example on the top is showing one region in North Korea, and then the same region in North Korea after 7 years. You could see when there's a train station renovation, there's new buildings that are built, and a human eye can easily spot that. So how do we teach machines to read these signals? And computer vision, there are new techniques that we can apply them. All these codes are in research. We share the codes through GitHub. You can download them and apply them, merge them, and then you are able to gain understanding of economic status from daytime images. Now let's assume we have another data set, for example, height above the sea level of every single data point, which is, again, becoming available. Once we combine the existing daytime images with the height information, we can even track the shape of the buildings, and then this would even revolutionize our understanding of what is an urban structure. So I hope that I gave you good examples of computational social science from different fields, and that having lots of data, different kinds of data, and applying methodologies could bring really huge innovations in various fields. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about what kind of NLP impact I find as could be having really, really huge impact in computational social science. And one of the questions that a lot of people have been asking is, can AI generate original expressions? And not just original expressions, but expressions that are persuasive, like we saw in the IBM debater yesterday. I felt like I was in the future. But what about original expressions that are so beautiful, that are worthy of copyright or certain award? And these are all, I think, are becoming possible thanks to all of these new models, Transformer, Elmo, BERT, and many other Sesame Street characters that I wish to see in the future from this community. And I heard that while preparing for this presentation, my students brought my attention to this particular data set, Squad 2.0. I thought it was hugely interesting. So in this data set, there are 50,000 unanswerable questions that are adversarially added by the crowdsourcing workers. And so you're not given a sentence, given a paragraph. Crowd workers would come up with questions that you cannot simply answer from that paragraph. And then would computers try to guess, or would simply recognize that it is not answerable? And the human performance is 86.83, F1 is 89, and you could see AI has already beaten the human performance, as like in many other cases. And here's a story that says, a novel written by Japanese AI program passed the first round of screening for a national literary prize. This is from 2016. So, interestingly, the title of the novel is The Day a Computer Writes a Novel. So the reviewers of these national literary prize would have had no idea this was written by an AI program. And based on all the talks that I have been listening to since the past few days, I have no doubt maybe in 10 years or 20 years, we're going to have the first keynote speaker, AI keynote speaker in this conference. the innovations are not just on NLP. AI programs, NLP techniques are beating human performance in many different ways. And here is a picture that was created completely by AI without human intervention that was sold at $432,000. And just like any artwork, an artist would sign their work. The AI program had signed the work by adding a loss function at the bottom right. Okay. And also the picture on the right was produced entirely by a 3D painting of Rembrandt mimic. It was also an awesome art piece. So in computational social science, all of these advances lead to hugely interesting questions. How do we define creativity? Should AI-generated work, not the work that human started and it's assisted by AI, but completely AI-generated work, should that be protected by copyright? So let's quickly think about why that might be helpful. So if we protect something by copyright, this is great because there are already people willing to pay a huge amount of money. There's a market. It will bring new innovations to all of these algorithms. There are incentives. What might be the downside? In the law and ethics community, one drawback might be maybe it's diminishing human value, for sure. But there's a really interesting concern that these AI programs take much fewer effort than humans to create the same kind of artwork. So a symphony, a music symphony created by the AI program in University of Malaga in Spain, it took only 8 minutes to create a symphony. And then the London Symphony played it. For a human composer, it would take maybe a few months or even a year to come up with a nice symphony. The same with all of these writing of the novels and so on. So in the future, when our children's children and maybe children want to create something that is artistic, maybe all of the storylines or the music tunes might already been copyrighted, that they're not able to create something new. So this is the concern that the law community is posing, and so far none of the country has allowed AI programs to obtain copyright. But there's a discussion in Japan especially. Next year or in the coming few years, they're going to start considering the first copyright for AI rights. So it's a very interesting venue. Okay, so now in the remainder of the talk, I would like to share a little bit about my research on fake news and on the AI rights. So when I talk about fake news, I think this community is actually leading fake news research. I learned that yesterday there's going to be a propaganda-related demonstration tomorrow, and then by QCRI group, Giovanni's group. And then also, Yejin Che at UW has done some interesting work on the propaganda detection as well. And there are many papers that I would like to learn more about from the NLP community. But I want to give you my perspective of how fake news detection has been done. So here are two examples of fake news. So the little squared color blocks on the toothpaste, supposedly showing you organic versus chemical components. It's a fake news. And on the right, you see Hurricane Harvey. There's a shark in the highway. And this is a Photoshop image, and it was retweeted 87,000 times. And a Fox News reporter mistakenly thought this was true and said it in a national broadcast television. And follow-up, there were many people who tried to say, okay, this shark news is fake. But guess how many people retweeted that message? Not so many. So certain fake news are really hard to, it's easily spreading, and it's really hard to fix. this toothpaste I added because it has actually affected my own family. We've been believing this for a couple of years, and I learned it this month, actually. But it's from North Macedonia. I talked to the friend of a friend who created this message. And I shared this news to my family, because we all have been using the black toothpaste for cleaning our silverware. And even after I tried to fix it, my mother would still refuse to believe. So I think we are all affected, small and large, by different kinds of fake news. Why does fake news spread? And how can individuals tell? As an individual user, you just have a small screen where you just see one piece of information, which looks very interesting. It looks novel. It's not like any information that you saw before. It's worth sharing. So individuals have little chance to determine if something is fake or not. Even when I'm studying fake news, it's really hard for me. But what if we look at the collective network that's spreading on Twitter, Facebook, different mediums? Would these network, the shape of the spread, leave different traces? That was our hypothesis we had in 2013, and we started looking into this issue. So to do this study, we need to have not a sample, but you need to have a complete trace of a network. Because if you only have partial samples, you would be missing the important critical links that are connecting the network. So in our lab, luckily we had a complete trace of the Twitter network. This network was gathered between 2006 and 2009. It contains nearly complete trace of all the public tweets. And we have 54 million users, nearly 2 billion links and 2 billion tweets, and we share the topology here. We also, I'm open to collaboration if you want to do any NLP task on this data. It's complete, but it's old, so it has merits and drawbacks. Okay, so we have the complete data. Now we need is rumors and non-rumors. For rumors, we can look into rumor fact-checking sites like Snopes or PolitiFact. And for non-rumors, we can simply look at popular news that spread that particular year. So I'm going to show you 3 patterns of rumors and non-rumors that we found in our research. And here are some example rumors. So Nicole Kidman, Lady Gaga had a sex change. These are rumors because we don't know. And Emma Watson died. Emma Watson, so interesting. Emma Watson dies every year on Twitter and many platforms, and so as many celebrities. Barack Obama is Muslim. We found Bigfoot, and this Bigfoot news was also it spread widely because a BBC reporter had put it up on the BBC website. So when traditional media picks it up, it just spreads much more. And the last example is Apple will launch a square-shaped iPhone, which we never saw. And if you're interested, you can download all of these tweets, the relevant tweets of the rumors and non-rumors from our +1 paper. If you go to this paper website, and then on the supplementary information, you can simply download it. Okay, the pattern number 1 is a temporal pattern. So regular news has 24 cycle. So once it's up, the next day it loses value very quickly. So you're going to see a huge peak on the first day, and then it goes away. It's typical of what we expect. The rumors, on the other hand, would have a spiky pattern because there's maybe some agenda, or it's finding new audiences, eyeballs that would still find it really interesting and fresh. So the temporal pattern was prominently different. And how do we model this? So there had been a model called Spike M model, which models from the CMU, from CMU group, and it shows you this spiky pattern of a single spike. So it's modeling information propagation. And then we extend this model to have multiple spikes over a certain periodicity. So we generalize this model mathematically, and then all the features of this model become the features for training. Okay, pattern number 2 is structural. So this pattern is a very expensive pattern because most researchers do not get access to the complete underlying social network topology. So this would be only possible at the platform level, but not as individual researchers. But when we look at it, the figure on the right is showing how a single non-rumor is propagating. Nodes are the users. Links are when there's a mention or retweets. Figure on the left is propagation of a single rumor. And some nodes appear disconnected when somebody shares it, and nobody retweets them. So it's individual sharing. So we believe we see lots of disconnected, fragmented subgroups because rumors are interesting, but once you retweet them or mention them, you're losing your sort of like credibility. So people are less willing to share. So a lot of different reasons might come into place, but we do see structurally different patterns in the propagation network. But again, this feature is really expensive, and you need to have enough time to observe this pattern. So you won't be able to do this at the early detection. The last one, which you're more familiar with, are the linguistic patterns. We use Luke features, and then we find certain words like tentative expressions. I heard it from somewhere. So-and-so says it, but that so-and-so is my brother, or I heard it on the radio, or it's not an exact source. And then we also see lots of negation. I know this is rumor. It should be false, but here it's so funny. Listen to this. So people negate or show weak signs, add disclaimers, in case the information turns out to be false and they don't want to be blamed for it. So there are particular linguistic patterns, and when we combine all of these, we can predict the rumors really well. And some research group at Stanford had compared how good algorithms are in detecting rumors as opposed to humans. So let's assume we have 50 rumors, 50 true news, and we mix it and give it to people. And if we pick it at random, we're going to have 50% accuracy. And these people had given to humans. What do you think are the percentages of average internet users in detecting rumors from true news? Okay. Usually some people say like 30% or lower than 50, but it's 66%. It's better than random, but little marginally better than random. And as we know, in many AI tasks, it's beating average human performance. The more data that you have, you're able to detect it more with higher accuracy. But if you want to do it at a very early stage, of course, you're going to lose some accuracy in there, right? But how do we interpret this? Then should algorithms simply decide which is rumor and which is not, and then tell us what to do? I don't think that should be the answer. It would be scary if some algorithm decides what to do for us. But instead, there are just so many information that are produced and shared online every single day in different languages that the algorithm can just prune them and then send the small set of likely rumors to fact checkers. So it could be used as a first sort of pruning step. Okay, so the previous research was assuming when you have the complete trace after the rumor propagation, then you see these beautiful patterns of propagation. But what if you want to detect rumors on the first 1 month or the first 1 week, or even for the first 100 tweets? What would be your performance? So we compare the importance of the features over a cumulative period of time from the beginning, and what we find is linguistic patterns are consistently working well compared to other features. Of course, when you have all the features throughout the whole time, combining all of them would work best, but linguistic feature was very important, and then the prominent linguistic features keep changing. At first, these kind of features come out. At the second stage, these kind of features come out. So this was, I think is really interesting, and I know that a lot of the NLP papers have looked into this issue as well. Moving beyond, we also looked at variant of this problem. Because when we wanted to look at false news, often it contained links. So that when you click on the link, the actual content was containing completely different story or contained similar story, but it had some agenda like a promotional code or something. So what we wanted to do was, what if we compare the headline of the news story and the full body text, and can a model tell us what's the similarity of these features? And we use hierarchical models to solve this. And this paper presented at AAAI this year, we also show a 1 million scale data set, which might be fun for you to play with. OK, so there are a bunch of rumors and fake news research, but let's not just stop there. Because the study published by researchers at Facebook show how a fake news is spreading on the Facebook network. And when somebody writes a comment to the post saying, this is fake, you could see the response at the Snopes. When people respond with a Snope link, then it's marked the red. Then you see that the red nodes do not propagate further that much. So when people know that this is likely false news, people do not participate in spreading that much. So let's not just stop at detecting, but let's try to have certain features on the platform that would actually minimize the spread of fake news. So to wrap up the first part of the fake news part, detecting fake news and rumors, it's become a very important question. But still, there are more questions that we might be answering by collaborating with interdisciplinary researchers, such as why do people want to spread fake news, even though when you know that it is fake news? And secondly, NLP community has been advancing the technology, and thanks to all the collaborative effort, we're able to tackle this problem much better. But I do see that it hasn't ended. Even though we now achieve 90%, some papers claim they achieve above like 93% in detection. Fake news keeps changing. We've seen the launch of the Obama fake video in 2017. When you have an audio of a celebrity, there are enough data that you can create a high-resolution video of that celebrity speaking that sentence. And when you have a text, you can even create an audio of that celebrity with his or her own style talking that particular sentence. So when you combine these technologies, you could create any celebrity or any politician who says certain things with really high resolution. So when fake news is combined with these GAN-based generated media content, it's going to have really huge impact. And I think the next generation fake news will involve AI even generated fake news, and it would be interesting to see how we handle them. OK, so that was the fake news part. And switching gears, I want to take you now to maybe like 10 years or 20 years further into the future. So now, most of the cars that we see on the road are not self-driving. But the statistic says that by 2040, 95% of the cars, or 90-something%, will be completely autonomous. So what does completely autonomous car means? It means that the human intervention to the car, you trying to control the car, will increase the chance of an accident. So the car should be just roaming by itself without any human touching. So we will have a shared car pretty much, and we won't even need a driver's license. Upon borrowing that shared car, you would sign up for a certain temporary insurance for that ride, and so on. So these are what we think about what the future will be like. And we were interested in knowing then how would these autonomous systems interact with human. And we, as just a fun project, we went into elementary schools, we went into talk to kids and middle school children, and we asked them, can you imagine this is the future when you have a robot that's so smart that can talk and think independently, and what would you like to do with the robot? Second grade, 7-year-olds would draw. They want to play with the robots, and their drawings are characteristic. The size of the robots are very similar to them, and they're positioned very close to the robot. They're doing something together. They're playing soccer, jump rope, and they're playing video games together. And this one on the left is drawn by my daughter. Robot is cooking for her. But now when we ask to middle school kids, age 12, 13, 14, their vision for robot is more task-driven. So the robot is cleaning a house when he or she is playing outside. And one student even draw that robot is doing homework for her while she's reading a comic book. And then you could see a little more distance from the robot and the person, and often robot is drawn a little smaller than the human. So I think our understanding of our interaction or our thinking, perception towards this AI and robot is really important. When these children, 7-year-olds, grow up, and when we see these technologies advancing so fast, and we know for sure at a certain point we're going to have AI and robots more coming into our daily lives, their perception of the future generation's perception of the robot and AI would be very, very different. Unfortunately, there will be a case when the actions of these autonomous AI and robots would clash with our human appetite, right? So one example would be crashes in the self-driving cars. So this paper, called the Moral Machine Experiment by the MIT team, it's a fantastic example of what might happen in the future and how algorithms might need to make ethical and moral decisions. So you might have seen this picture. It's coming from the trolley problem. It's supposed to be a train, and the train has only 2 tracks. It's going at such a high speed that there's no option to simply stop it. And you see there are people, unexpectedly, people standing in both of the lanes. Which lane should you choose? Or should you just keep going on to your existing lane that you were in? So these are very difficult questions to answer. And the MIT group has made a website called themoralmachine.mit.edu, which is still up. You can still go and play. And they show this game. And the question is, which lives do you think should be spared? And again, the option is, unfortunately, there's no option to stop or no option for the car to crash into the walls or anything. You just have to choose between the 2 options. And then the first option would be, if you go straight, you're going to kill more people. And inevitably, all the people will die. Let's just assume for the sake. If you turn the car left, and then only 1 person will die. But is it ethical? Is it moral to make that adjustment? So you could choose between action versus inaction, or you could choose between saving many people versus fewer people. And in the next example, if the car goes straight, the passengers will die. But if the car makes a turn, then the pedestrians will die. And they also have the situation when the pedestrians are crossing the street when it's a red light. If someone's a jaywalker, is it okay then to give less priority? And then they also keep changing the ages of the people, the fitness of the people, so that some people are fit, some people looking poor, some people looking high status. So they had this website online for a couple of years, and overall they gained 40 million decisions from nearly 200 countries. And this is what they report. So the authors are not suggesting one is better than the other. It's just the collective opinions of people gathered on their website. So the preferences for each item listed on the left are less preferred, and the preferences for the right-hand side is more preferred. So for example, looking from the bottom, people prefer to spare lives of humans more than pets, right? And more lives than fewer lives, younger lives than older, elderly, the lawful than the unlawful, sparing high status looking people versus low status looking people, sparing the fit versus the large, and sparing females versus males, and pedestrians over passengers, and interestingly, inaction over action. So this is such difficult question that rather people would choose a little bit inaction. But the degree is a little bit smaller than the other preferences. So what should we do? These self-driving cars are coming, and I talked with a friend who lives in Irvine, and then she was telling me on every garage on her neighbor except for her, there's Tesla. So these cars are coming, and who would be the drivers? Who would be the owners of these cars? More affluent people. Who would be the pedestrians of these cars? The less affluent people. But who are making these decisions? And is it ethical to algorithmically add these codes into the system? What if we don't add? It's going to be acting like random, right, given all the preferences. So there are a lot of questions. The authors claim we're not suggesting one would be better than the other. There are country-wise differences on their preferences as well. The authors simply note that this is a discussion that's not involving the public very well. So we need to start the discussion now. And I thought this research was fantastic. And we did something similar, asking liability of AI and robots. So our question is here. How do people attribute responsibility, awareness, and punishment to AI, robots, and their associates? So is something like electronic personhood even possible? So legal personhood is not just traits of human beings, but also NGOs have legal personhood, governments have legal personhood, corporations have legal personhood. The corporations can hold assets, and when it does something wrong, then it could pay fine. And when it does something severely wrong, then the persons behind the corporations, like the CEO, would be going to jail. So there are systems. It makes the legal system clean. When we have more intelligent AI robots in our society, in our daily lives, there will be cases where we clash legally. But for now, there's no legal personhood, and it's challenging to punish someone or something. Okay, so this was the question we asked. So we gave 2 examples. So first, we asked the question, let's assume a human doctor prescribes a wrong medicine, the wrong dose or something, and the patient goes into a coma. Should the doctor be punished? Is the doctor aware of that fault? How much punishment should the doctor receive? And to another survey participant, we asked, just changing the agent. Let's assume in the future, AI doctor prescribes the wrong medicine, and the scenario is the same. It's for this exact same crime, just the agent is different. And the second scenario is a war situation where already AI and drones and robots are really heavily used. So a human soldier can kill unarmed civilians, right? Mistakenly, these things happen. And then we just change it so that fully autonomous robot kills unarmed civilian. Then how much punishment should that robot, or should the manufacturer of the robot, or should the owner of the robot receive? So this is the question we ask. And we ask 3 components: responsibility, awareness, punishment. Responsibility is directly asking who is liable. And awareness is something more soft, but it's very important for interpretation of the law. Because if somebody kills another person, but he was unaware at the stage that his mental status is unaware, then he will get different sentences. So the liability is separate, but the interpretation of the law would be affected by the awareness question. And the third question is, who should be punished? So this is the responses we get. So you can imagine we got like 3,000 responses, and each person would be only seeing one question, and they're not aware of the other person's questions. So for the exact same level of crime, humans were always perceived more responsible than AI and robots. AI is perceived slightly more responsible than the robots. Awareness. Humans are very aware of that fault. AI and robots are not aware of that fault. More closely, not likely aware. Should we punish them? Definitely for humans. But also, AI and robot, people said, we want to punish them. Not as much as humans, but still, even though they're not aware, we want to punish them. So this was the response we thought was really interesting. And when we say, OK, there's a manufacturer behind the AI and the robot, owner, and a supervisor, a human being behind that, then who should be responsible? Then most people now choose, rather than the AI and the robot, they're slightly more responsible, aware, and they need to be punished. So, but not as much as the human agent who actually committed the crime, but almost to the same degree of the human agent. OK, so this is my final slide for the result. Okay, so now we know that people want to punish AI and robot for their crimes. Then we wanted to check with our lawyer colleague, had said, to punish something, you need to first give something. You need to either give assets or physical independence or certain things. So we asked, are you willing to give assets to AI and robots so that you can then later take that asset as a punishment? Are you willing to give physical independence so that you can later use it as a form of punishment? And people say, no, we don't want to give assets and independence to these AI and robots. And we also asked about the punishment functions. So deterrence means we know that if we commit a crime, we're going to go to jail. So because of that thinking, you don't do certain actions. And people say robots and AI, even if they know the rule that they will be punished, they're not going to be afraid, and they will still commit the crime. So they're not afraid of the consequences. So deterrence showed out very negative. Reform is really interesting. If we ask, are criminals who are punished, then will they reform afterwards? People say no. But when we say, will AI and robots be reformed? They say yes, because they can be reprogrammed. So there's a difference. But the very last component, which is retribution, is negative, meaning that even somehow we take away the money or physical independence, or even if, let's assume we somehow punished the agent of robot and AI, we still feel it's not satisfying. But if we do that for the counterpart of human crime, if the person, the criminal, goes to jail, we take money or something, then we are satisfied. But for the robot, even if we do the same, we are not satisfied. So there seems like an unfinished, never-ending loop that we do want to punish AI and robots. And even if we do, we will not be satisfied. And we don't even want to give anything so that we can even make means for the punishment. So this is what our research has found, and we call this the punishment gap. And now that all these autonomous systems are coming, we believe this discussion, so how should these cases be resolved, should receive more attention. So our project is in part collecting people's opinion and just also making a campaign so that people are aware of these issues. Okay, so let me wrap up by saying that developing AI leads to new questions. Sometimes it's moral and ethical questions. And with technologies advancing quickly, we need to have more public input on this. And lastly, discussing how we set the boundaries for what is okay for robots and AI to do is actually defining the boundaries of what humanity is. And let me give you one example. You've seen this Boston Dynamics robot testing. So this gentleman is kicking the robot, and sometimes he brings a huge piece of wood, and then he pushes the robot down. And this robot, dog-looking robot, keeps coming back up. So they were showing their technology, but the comments on these YouTube videos were nasty. They were saying it's really unethical, I don't like this. There was outpouring discouragement, outpouring negative comments on this video. So why is it that we feel pain in watching these videos, even though the robots would not mind being kicked at for testing? So when we think about what kinds of rights we want to bring to AI and robots, or even if those rights make sense, for example, copyright or right to enter into contracts so that it's easy for us to negotiate with the AI programs. Some people are even proposing, some researchers like Kate Darling proposes, we need to come up with some rights that would prevent robots and AI from being handled very cruelly. We need to be nice to them. Not because it's good for them or that's what they want, it's because children or people who grow up watching the violent behavior toward these agents or these things would grow up to be violent people towards other human beings. So when we think about what kinds of future of the law boundaries that we want to have, it's not just about what it makes logical sense, but it also has to do with how we want to define our humanity and what we think is humanly acceptable. Right, so I want to thank my collaborators, and I added on the last bullet a question mark, and I want to invite you to come visit me, and I want to really hire a NLP expert postdoc, so please come talk to me, tell me about interesting work. I'm new to this field, and thank you very much.
I think we still have some time to take questions.
Hello, thanks for the great talk. I really enjoy the intersection between AI and morality. I have a question, which is, it seems that we can do two kind of things which might be conflicting. One is we want to humanize AI and say that we want to assert certain value upon them, and we need to accept them as human-like beings. Another way to go is to dehumanize AI and saying that there is actually no intelligence underlying. This is only symbolic, algorithm, and curve fitting. Right. So, and which one do you think is a more reasonable path? Because, for me, it seems that AI is not really intelligence, and we shouldn't really consider them as human-like.
Right. Okay. So I think I have a slide on that. So in the electronic legal personhood, if we think that they should be deserving some sort of right, not all of the rights that humans have, but maybe some rights, just like copyrights or contracts, then some researchers support this opinion, some oppose them seriously for various reasons listed here. And one of the critical reasons people oppose is it could be used as human liability shield. So in case of a crime, people could just say, oh, it was the robot, it was the AI, it was not it was not us. So it could be used as a human liability shield, and that's a critical comment that, that the researchers propose. So for me, my personal opinion would not be very important, but at the beginning of this project, I didn't have any preference for anything, but the more I look into this issue, maybe it would make the system more clean legally to give very few limited rights to very highly advanced AI programs, such as just copyright. But that's just my personal view. Okay.
Hi.
Where
I'm here. Thank you for the wonderful talk. I just want to offer an opinion on the so-called trolley dilemma that has been posed over and over again in public forums. People have been talking about it over and over again, how autonomous cars are supposed to choose between lives they're going to save and going to punish. But I think people should be aware of the two things. Number one, that when this test was put to humans, humans cannot choose at all. So for a very, very good reason, and which leads to my second opinion, which is that the assumption that autonomous cars, vehicles, or any of the system we build will make such symbolic choices is erroneous. Nobody programs anything to make a symbolic preference of, say, old life versus new life, or left versus right. And if you think about it, when humans are driving a car, when you're in such an accident, when you're facing the choice, there is no such thing. We don't think, oh, should I choose old life versus new life? This is why humans cannot choose, right? So the systems we build, all the algorithms we're building here, do not have such symbolic rules. And it is not, it is just barking up the wrong tree to assume that we do or we will. We never will make, well, I should not say never, but in the current trend and approaches, and nobody programs our machines to make such symbolic preferences. So we should stop talking about these moral dilemma in such light. I mean, it is important for us to debate morality and values for our AI systems, but we should really stop talking about it in a symbolic way because it's misleading. It makes people more scared, makes the public more scared, and it is detrimental to because when we want to develop AI for the benefit of humanity, we do need to collaborate with the public. But if the public is misled about what we do, that is not that is a waste of time, to say the least. Yeah. So we need to really educate the public about how we are building our systems, and it's not in a symbolic way. And this is like decades old AI, whatchamacallit, moral whatever dilemma. We should stop talking about it, and we should concentrate and focus on what we're doing today. For example, do we have so the IEEE, for example, has a standards committee on ethically aligned design. And we should, in the community, talk about how we can do NLP in a way, for example, the fake news, how can we contribute more in that way? And just forget about the symbolic stupidity. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I think you're completely right. And even I think the purpose of this particular paper was not to come up with algorithms to prefer one over the other. And I think your comment also goes generally to all of the platforms today, such as Facebook and Google, because the algorithms are not so simple that you can definitely say this over the other or one over the other, because it's all the combinations of all the features that goes in, and depending on what are the situations, like the background color and everything, every time it might give slightly different responses. But I want to pose you back like a question that I heard from one of the audience from another talk that I gave. And one gentleman, he's a government official, had said, okay, so he thinks in the future, if this is a truly autonomous, truly smart autonomous car, it's going to act in such a way that it will choose the path that will lead to the least damage to the car. Okay. Not thinking about all the others, because it's the car, if the car is so smart. And what would that mean? I thought that was a very interesting question. And that would mean maybe you prefer passengers over pedestrians, or we don't know the implication. I think this paper, by posing the question in such a way that it's very provoking, and it certainly did a very good job of engaging the public into this discussion. But you're completely right. I think there's a little misleading factor that its algorithms are not like, crystal cut. Okay. And another feedback that I heard, another comment that I heard really interesting about this is, if most of the people are going to be, or the people who are going to be the pedestrians are not, do not have enough money to purchase these cars and will only be the pedestrians of these cars, and then why don't we make it more social algorithm such that it just benefits it benefits more pedestrians, and then the person who chooses, there could be different insurance plans that could affect the options. So there were some interesting proposals as well related to this issue. But I think provoking, maybe it's definitely misleading, but I think we are simply lacking the discussion involving the public, and this paper has done a really great job in that.
So I'd like to have a quick comment about the legality and how regulators should actually regulate these digital entities. Currently, a lot of the legal system revolves around the assumption that people are agents and they actually ought to know what is right. People have moralities. Yet this doesn't seem to be that clear for digital entities or AI entities, where a lot of these AI entities are very capable of doing a lot of the things that we would say people are able to do, such as currently robots are able to trade stocks, write stories. But the question remains of, do these robots actually truly understand what they're doing? And we can even argue that they lack such a comprehension of ethics. How should regulators adjust such laws, and how can we talk about legality and morality of robotic actions when robots truly, you could argue, don't actually have such concepts?
Right. I think you're asking a very difficult question. I don't have any response for that because, but I think that's something that we should really, those topics should be talked about more. And I don't know which community that might be, but I'm sure some communities looking into how to build like an ethical decision, machine for this AI and robots, So we'll see in the future. Thank you for the question.
So we are really running out of time, so I think we'll stop here. Let's have another round of applause to thank the speaker.